Greetings, adventurers! Welcome back to the Crithalla Podcast. My name is Ol Skipfleck. I am your host for this evening. I have my two co-hosts here, Sodope Stavi. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
What's going on, Ol?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, man.
Fantastic.
Doing awesome.
Fantastic. And we also have our other co-host here, Cosmic Key. Mike, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing much. Just excited to babble for a while.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. That's all we do here anyway. We just babble.
That's like 90% of running games.
Yeah, that literally. So if this is the first time you're checking out the Crithalla Podcast, thank you so much for checking us out. We run a show here called DMs Discuss, where every episode here on the podcast, we discuss a specific Dungeon Master question. First of all, I just want to thank everybody who checked out the first episode. We had a lot of positive reviews, and now we have better audio. I have a better mic. Mike has a better mic. That was a lot of mics at once. And
Yeah, double mics.
Mikeception. And for those watching on YouTube, we're doing different environments every episode. So today we're in an alchemist lab.
Wow, look at this place.
Isn't it cool? It's crazy.
Don't touch that. Don't touch that.
Mike, don't put your hand on that.
Mike.
Too late.
Mike, no!
Too late.
But so we discuss a question every episode, and this one I think will be really fun. I came up with this the other day. Your favorite go-to D&D monsters. I know every DM has their go-to, I got to use this all the time. Sometimes a little bit too much, where their players get sick of it, like me. But I think it would be fun to discuss different types of monsters that we just love to use for our games. So I don't want to start this time. I want to send it off to Stavi this time.
Send it off to me. Okay,
Yeah.
Well, stay a while and listen. I have... hello everybody. Welcome back to this week or month's episode of DMs Discuss. So my go-to monster, huh? So I have a theory when it comes to monster selection, and a lot of DMs may agree with this. Some may disagree. It really just a matter of context. But monsters should reflect the environment that the players are playing in, or that the campaign takes place in, right? So, if you're in the middle of a city center, it's not really likely that you're going to run into, a gang of troglodytes or something like that, just running rampant, or gelatinous cubes or something like that in the streets. Mm-hmm. But as a really good filler monster, for me personally, being a huge Tolkien fan, I really love using swarm monsters like goblins that are things that are really just brutal and kind of tribal and very unorganized, but super vicious, but also really intelligent. So goblins, orcs, and undead are probably my three biggest ones. So goblinoids and undead are probably my absolute go-to creatures that I like throwing at players just as fillers.
That's pretty cool, because you know what? One of mine, actually, which I use a lot too, is kobolds. Because, again, they are very much like a swarm-type monster. And with their pack tactics ability, that gives them abilities like, I think that's advantage on their attack rolls.
Yeah, when an ally is within 5 feet.
Yeah, exactly. So having them, all have advantage, swarming you, a kobold's I don't know how much it's got, 9 health, 10 health, nothing crazy. But having them together, now all of a sudden they all have advantage on you, it can become very troublesome very quickly.
And I want to make clear, when we say swarm, we don't mean a swarm of flies or a swarm of bees or a swarm of rats. Not like the technical swarm. We mean waves of lines and lines of combatants swarming you in that regard.
Yeah. No, a bunch of little guys coming at you can be a huge issue at certain times. Definitely.
Strength in numbers. It's terrifying, really. It is.
Yeah, it is.
How about you, Mike?
Well, first of all, you mentioned Cobalt, so pour one out for Kevin, because I miss him dearly.
Oh, yeah. Kevin. R.I.P. Kevin. That was a
R.I.P. Kevin.
That was a character that was not supposed to be a character that Mike made a character. Classic players just wanting to try to make everything amazing. He was just a kobold that wanted to kill them, and they
I talked him out of it.
Yeah, you talked him out of it, and then he like tried to talk to you, and you guys like became friends, and you were like, yeah, go tell the big bad guy that like you just stop it. And then you found out that he actually, for betraying him, he cut him open and hung him on the wall, and you guys found him, and it was terrible. And yeah, Mike was not happy that day.
Kevin, no.
Well, so
sorry, way too dark.
No, too soon. Too soon.
Too soon.
No, it's never too dark for me, but too soon. It could be too soon. So, for me, Undead and Goblinoids are fantastic, but nothing for me puts the fear of all the gods in my players like a Beholder does. Because a Beholder, if it's possible, they're like dragons in a way, where they're very narcissistic and gluttonous, and they covet, but they're bigger assholes than dragons, if that's even possible. Because they have delusions of grandeur, they're xenophobic, they're born to be tyrants. It's worse. But also, in my experience, players rely way too much on magic items. And a Beholder can get rid of those just by looking at you. And I just ran a Beholder for my other group just last weekend, and as he's talking to them, he's moving closer, and they just thought nothing of it. And then they had like a magical mind link, and the barbarian was like, take him now, in his mind, but no one else heard him because they were in the anti-magic cone and they didn't realize. So he just charged by himself and got disintegrated.
Oh my god.
And then their familiars were taken from them because the anti-magic cone cuts connections to summoned or conjured creatures. Their weapons didn't work. Their spells didn't work. They all had to find out how big the cone was and which directions to go to get away from it. And then they have lair effects in 5th edition, like a dragon, and regional effects that they can do, and legendary actions. So they are very beefy, terrifying, with a lot of tentacles and eye stalks. And they're very Cthulhu-ish, and I love them dearly.
Yeah, Beholders are just, like, the coolest. Like, when you think, like, Dungeons and Dragons, like, the iconic characters, which we'll get into later, the iconic monsters and stuff like that, like, oh, man, the Beholder, I mean, that is a classic monster, you know?
I'd argue that's one of the most, like, quintessential Dungeons and Dragons monsters. There's just all these eye stalks everywhere that shoot different types of rays: ray of enfeeblement, ray of death, ray of Midas touch. You know. It's and you're right though about the Beholders too, because they popularized a particular Beholder. I think 4th and 5th edition is when that character became a thing. I could be wrong on this. Somebody will probably comment on this, but there was a Beholder by the name of Zenithar.
Yeah.
And Zenithar has a pet familiar goldfish, which is kind of funny and odd. But he also is a very brilliant creature. He knows what he wants. He's very meticulous. He's very methodical. He is xenophobic. He is kind of a dick. But to run into a Beholder in the wild, alone in the cave, like a feral one that hasn't had much interaction with different societies and civilizations, terrifying. I'd rip up my character sheet if I saw one, like truly.
I think if I remember correctly, the name of the Beholder in my game was Zaldrin or something like that, but his title was Ruler of all things glorious and gluttonous. So he was basically an asshole.
What achievement do you have to get that title?
Oh, I'll just give it to you. I'm very liberal if you want it. But
I might use that one.
And another, yeah, go for it. And another thing that I love about them is that they also have a good bite attack. I know they have beams and stuff, but they're a meatball and they're about 40% mouth.
Yeah.
And they have a pretty good bite attack.
They do. And what was really cool, so I haven't used a Beholder yet, but I used a variant of a Beholder in one of our games a couple of months ago. It's just one of those alternate variants that's just on the side of a book, and it's an Undead Beholder. Like, I think it was a challenge rating like 5, and it was just a Beholder, but just undead and unhinged, and was controlled by this evil being, and he was just as bad, if not worse, than like a normal Beholder. Like, I couldn't believe that it was like a challenge rating 5, because it still had like the death ray, like it just incinerated characters anyway. So
yeah, I think the only difference, I think the only difference undead ones have is like they have less rays and the DC is a little lower, but other than that, they can still turn you to ash.
Yeah.
They can still Thanos you in a second if you fail.
Exactly.
Snapping their eye stalks.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are those called? The Undead Beholders. I think, are they Watchers? Are they called something like that?
Yeah, there is a specific name.
Yeah.
I think the name has been lost in 5th edition, but there was a other edition names for them specifically.
Yeah, because I believe where I got the source from was the Dungeon Master's Guide. It was like just a little like abbreviation note somewhere on a page about an Undead Beholder.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of where I took the stats from and all the abilities and everything. It was pretty cool. It was actually a lot of fun to play with.
So do you have any stories like how Mike had with using a Beholder in an actual play environment? Like, have you used anything in... Like, what are some examples of monsters that you've used?
Like my go-to monsters?
Like your go-to, yeah.
Okay, well, Mike's gonna know for sure. Out of everything I've ever seen in Dungeons and Dragons, I've seen dragons, I've seen beholders, I've seen crazy, disgusting Nothics, I've seen everything. I think the coolest freaking monster in Dungeons and Dragons is the Mimic. I think it is just the most versatile monster. You can literally use it anywhere, at any time. They're a little bit beefy, but not too bad to handle. And so going back, when I first started looking into mimics, I remember I was on Reddit and I was like, what could be a mimic? Because I've always, you always see the chests, you see the doors, you see the carpeting.
Right.
And I was like, what could be a mimic? And I went on Reddit and I was reading, and there was just people that were like, yeah, I've made an entire town. And it was a mimic. It was a whole mimic.
The town was a mimic?
The whole town was a mimic. So I was like, and he broke it down. He was like, yeah, I like this was like an eyeball and this was a tooth and this. And I was like, holy shit. It reminded me of, do you remember the original Pokemon anime?
Oh my God, Ditto?
Not Ditto.
Okay.
Do you remember the episode where it was like that really creepy girl and she had like that like little town? And it was all like it was like a fake town.
Oh, the psychic trainer?
Yes.
The little
and like,
girl? Yeah.
And they all got put in the town, but it was like a fake town.
Like a dollhouse almost.
Yeah, that's what it was the dollhouse. And it reminded me of that. And I was like, that is just like so cool. So I took that idea and I was like, all right, Halloween was around the corner. I wanted to do a Halloween-esque D&D session. So I was like, all right, I am going to make a haunted house mimic. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting, not just like the whole house was just a mimic and you fought the entire house. They were inside the house and there was jump scares. And if they failed like their constitution rolls, the house would feed off of their fear and get stronger. So there was like a couple different like milestones. Like after 3 successful scares, like maybe it would get a little hazy in the house. Now it's a little bit harder to see. Now you have disadvantage rolls on like certain checks and stuff like that. And then as it got bigger, now it vibrated. Now the house vibrated. So now it was harder to like really focus in on a spell. Maybe you had disadvantage on a spell or disadvantage on attack rolls or something like that.
Wow,
And
that's brilliant.
It was so much fun, and I think it was one of my favorite games I ever created because it worked perfectly, too. Like, they didn't get to the max where it was like the house was literally trying to eat them. Like, because that's what it got to the point where, like, they probably would have died if they kept failing their constitution rolls. But it worked out perfectly, where as it was kind of morphing into this huge mimic, they were able to escape the house. And the house just kind of morphed into this giant mimic and just sucked into the ground and disappeared. It was, like, the most fun game I've ever
So the
run
players
far.
never killed it off?
They never killed it off.
So it could pop up again. A
It could
reoccurring
pop up
character.
again.
Ah,
Yeah.
I love that. Dude, you
yeah.
turned Monster House into a D&D session.
Literally. It was like the funnest thing.
I like the idea that you were saying, like, they can't, like, attack the house specifically. Like, they had no knowledge of the house being a mimic to begin with, correct? Or did they?
No.
Oh,
But
okay.
they were getting hints that it was somewhat alive. Because
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wasn't playing it up too well. Like, I was like, oh, you failed your constitution roll. Well, geez, all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So I was trying to, like, give them hints, but at the same time, like, yeah, this is a mimic. I wasn't trying to say that, like,
Right.
at all.
I'm picturing some barbarian ripping, like, the drywall off the walls, like, just hacking at the walls,
Yeah.
trying to claw his way out, That's awesome.
It was really fun. And that's when I realized, like, mimics are, like, the coolest. They are actually the coolest. I've made them, like, little Christmas presents. I've made them chests, doors, and I love versatility. I think that is such an important key factor that you need to have as a DM, is something you can use that has versatility options.
Mm-hmm.
So, I love mimics.
Yeah, I got that mimic Christmas present in the game.
Yes, you did. You did.
Yeah, I did. It was not a Merry Christmas.
It wasn't a very Merry Christmas at all. But you got
No.
through it. Mimics aren't that bad. Not that bad. Just a little bit. Not too
I'm a wizard. They're bad for me.
bad. They are bad for you. You're right.
So speaking of mimics, if you want a really good example of mimics that aren't mimics in name, but they are in function, that are used in a very effective way, Matt Mercer did a one-shot D&D session with Stephen Colbert. It's on YouTube. It's called The Red Nose Day 2019 or something like that, where Stephen Colbert plays as a bard, and he has, like, a little bee friend as, like, a familiar. And there is, without spoiling too much, there's a part at the end where there are, like, these red orbs that start rolling towards him, and then they start leaping at him, and they have these little teeth, and they bite him for, like, 1 point of damage each. And so it's like a swarm of little baby mimics that kind of...
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and it does, like, little negligible damage, but if enough of them swarm you, like, it's a problem.
I love that.
Yeah, that could be something fun to use, too.
Wow,
Like,
that morphed both of ours together. Swarms and mimics.
yeah. I mean, that's a swarm of undead mimics.
That's terrifying.
Undead mimics, yeah.
Oh my god, that's awesome. Do you guys have any other, like, go-to monsters, like your favorite ones to use all the time? Mike, maybe?
I think I've used Rakshasas multiple times.
I am drawing a blank.
They're fiends, but they look like cats with backwards hands.
Oh yeah, I've never come across one actually.
Yeah, they're very schemy, and they're very, like, tricky, and they're also really narcissistic. They like lavishness and luxury, but if you slight them, they will hunt you down and, like, shapeshift into someone you love just to kill you.
Oh man.
I actually found what you're talking about here in the first edition D&D book. I'll take a picture and post it up so you guys can see it.
Yeah, that'll be on the YouTube.
Yeah. So YouTube audio listeners, go check out the YouTube also.
Yeah, it's basically a requirement now. Sorry.
Yeah, you have no choice.
Those are cool. So what's their, like, special abilities?
They're agile, they're strong, really intelligent, and I think they are casters. So they have an array of spells.
Oh.
They kind of look like Khajiit.
Yeah, they're almost like tacticians and strategists. Like, they always show them, I think they are like Arabian or Indian in mythology. So they always show them with like flowing like clothes and like turbans and wielding scimitars usually, like in the art.
That's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to look into those maybe for the next session.
That kind of reminds me, if you've ever seen the Disney's Aladdin, right? Jasmine had that tiger.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, what I'm saying is that there could be parallels there with it being like an Arabian or like Middle Eastern mythology.
I think they primarily do look like tigers. They're definitely striped felines, I believe. I mean, I don't know if there's different breeds, but that's usually the one I use.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Stavi, do you have another go-to monster you like to use besides swarms?
Well, I mean, are we talking like big bads, or are we talking like just?
I don't know. I mean, have you used a big old bad multiple times just because you love using it so much?
Oh man, despite it being called Dungeons and Dragons, I haven't really used dragons that often.
Me neither.
Isn't that odd? Isn't that the strangest thing? Because like I love dragons, I really do. I love all types of drakes and dragons and draconic type creatures. Never used any, and I would really love to. This is more of like what I wish I could use more often, rather than what I do use.
I have a theory why that is. That neither of you have used it, and I've rarely used them as well. If someone uses dragons to their fullest potential, I don't think the group will survive.
That's like, fair. That's a party.
Whenever I've used a dragon, I've had to handicap the dragon. I had to like make it so they can't use their full range of movement, like the flying or the tail slaps or like the wing buffets. Like I had to hinder them. Otherwise, most characters don't have range attacks. Like wizards and stuff do, but dragons have pretty good saves. So what are you gonna do?
They do, yeah.
Well, one thing to consider too. I mentioned this before. I'm a big fan of Tolkien, and I just started getting into the lore of like Silmarillion stuff, like the world building of Middle Earth and Arda and all that. And Melkor, the original Dark Lord, when he first created the dragons, the first dragon didn't have wings. It was basically this massive, like the size of a city, huge salamander. It was a wingless drake, and it still was classified as a dragon. So I think if you're going to throw in dragons in a party, it might be a good idea to take into account the capabilities of your players. If you want to wipe your party and none of them have any ranged attacks, yeah, throw in a flying dragon, a flying prismatic, copper like green dragon or something like that.
And that's it. Then they're just done.
That's it.
That's just it. I mean, I even used what was that? A couple of months ago, I used a wyvern, which I mean is just a different type of dragon, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I almost died.
Yeah. Oh, well, one of our characters actually did die.
Yeah.
But
I almost died. That's when I made you guys all sad because my familiar was like nudging me, and you were like, "Mike, stop."
Yeah, you're making me cry. Stop. But even they're kind of a pain in the butt, like to beat, honestly. So yeah, a lot of like flying dragon things definitely are hard to beat, but they are fun. They are fun to use in the right scenarios.
Yeah,
in the right scenarios.
It's worth noting that if you are a DM, the power you wield is the power of a god, literally, when you're constructing this world that your players are engaging in. And you have full control over how deadly or how pacified a deadly creature can be. An example of this, I think we did this, Dan, when we were playing 4th edition, maybe. It could have been 4th edition. I introduced a Tarrasque.
Oh, yeah, you did.
And I had to handicap the hell out of a Tarrasque. And honestly, that's like sacrilege.
I know.
It was just cool because I wanted to see it. Like, I wanted to see it in the game world. But realistically, like, that whole countryside would have been obliterated.
I mean, the Tarrasque is like if you want to talk about dragons being a pain in the butt, oh man, a Tarask is just insane. Insane, man. It's like a brulette, but like way worse. Way worse. Oh man, yeah.
They're awful. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend Tarasks.
No, yeah. I don't either.
I give it a 3-star.
Yeah, no, out of like 20.
Out of 20. Yeah.
All right, cool. So anybody else have some fun go-to monsters?
Yeah. Well, so I guess the basic one would be humans, right? I mean, I guess humans are kind of
we are the true monsters.
We are the real monsters of any world, fantasy or otherwise.
It's true.
But no, my one of my absolute favorite monsters to throw at people, because they don't even realize what they're dealing with until it's too late usually. Mind flayers.
Oh man. Oh, I've been dying to use one of those. Dying.
You know, I started reading R.A. Salvatore's The Legend of Drizzt novels, and eventually, when you get into the Underdark, you start seeing and running into small groups of mind flayers. And in the book, he describes in detail how they operate, what it's like to encounter one realistically as per the canon. And God, it's like you really don't want to have to deal with that, like as a real person in real life. It's part cosmic horror. It's part you're dead.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
You are literally just straight up dead. They are so cool to use. I've been dying to use one of those for the longest time, but I know my players are so not ready for something like that, and I would have to dumb it down ridiculously just for them to, and I really don't want to. I feel like a mind flayer is such an iconic monster that like dumbing it down just like kind of kills it, you know.
Well, you could find like the players could find like a wounded mind flayer like on the brink of death who's like trying to manipulate their minds, but he's too weak physically to actually make a connection directly. But just give him a taste of how deadly that is, you know.
Yeah, I love mind flayers, especially since they're basically exactly Cthulhu horrors. They were from Spelljammers, I think.
Yeah, Spelljammer.
So they were like creatures from between the stars. They really were Lovecraftian in nature.
Yeah, no, they are so cool. Their abilities are sick. They're just, and they look so freaking cool. Like, come on,
and they have spaceships.
Yeah,
they're like the only race in D&D that has spaceships.
It's insane. Mm-hmm. Oh man!
But how about you, Mike? Anything else?
Personally, and you all have felt this before, and I'm making a setting specifically about this. I use the Fae a lot, and
yes,
the Fae are so varied, and they're for Disneyfying them to be cute and lovable and all this jazz. They are horrible alien creatures.
Yeah.
It's like you don't really know what they're thinking. You don't really know what they want. They just have a smile, some pixie dust, but they might just steal your kid when you're sleeping. That's what they wanted. You just don't know.
Yeah, literally the most deceptive monster in D&D, honestly.
Like especially if you start getting into like the pagan mythologies of like fae and like fairies and like how they operate throughout different cultures. You're right about the stealing the children. I mean, there were stories of parents who wouldn't even use their child's real name because they were afraid that the fairies would know their real name.
That's insane.
And if they ever found out their real name, like they would find them and be captured or something like that. So they would give them fake names, Fae safe names that dude, the Fae are terrifying.
They are.
They can be. They really can be. And you're right. There has been like a Disneyification of like.
Yeah. They think everyone's Tinkerbell.
Yeah. What was that latest 5th edition book that came out?
The Feywild one, right?
Yeah. The Feywild one where it basically looks like Candyland, the board game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's nothing terrifying about that.
No. I was just saying over the weekend that even if you take benign Fae actions, say while you're sleeping, they come into your house and shine your shoes. In a way, that's still terrifying. That means while you're sleeping, a bunch of wrinkled little lithe sons of bitches come into your house, go through your stuff, and deem you dirty, and then clean your belongings for you. That scares me.
Underpants gnomes.
Underpants gnomes?
Underpants
right?
gnomes. The most dangerous of all Fae.
I used to have a friend who's like, well, what creature right now, we're in my basement, what creature right now would scare you the most if they walked out of your door into the basement? And for them, it's like, oh, like a rabid dog or this. I'm like, a leprechaun. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because that's horrifying. It's abnormally small. It's going to have a smile on its face, and it has wickedness in its heart. And I don't know what it wants. A bear,
and like a
wants
box
to
of
eat
cereal or something.
Yeah, right? I know what a bear wants. It wants me dead. I don't know what this thing wants.
Yeah, not knowing is what makes it scary. Because like
That
literally every Fae will have its own agenda.
Yeah.
Whether they're bound by, the cosmic powers that created them to do a specific task, or by their own volition, they choose to do certain things like stealing kids. I mean, look at Peter Pan, right? If you were talking about Tinkerbell before, literally the Lost Boys were boys that were taken by fairies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And brought to the Fae world of Never Never Land to live there forever and ever and never go home.
My group just literally got back from, in my game, it's called the Bleak Lands, and it's where Fae,
cool name,
like dark Fae are, and the ones that are really strict with like, if you signed this contract, make this deal, say it thrice, it is the way it is, and they're very, they cover themselves in armor and like chitinous plates so they could show no softness to anyone in a negotiation, and they're terrified. They came back terrified. And they were like, well, are the good Fae better? And I'm like, no! They're worse! You're gonna drown in chaos if you go to the other place.
I like the idea that the Dark Fae are bureaucrats. Like they're like corporate bureaucrats.
Yeah, they get it.
Yeah.
Sign this contract. No union.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like just yesterday, I was doing. I've started doing cinematic scenes to sort of like show the group what's happening in the world because of their actions. Nothing that's going to give anything away, but if you were like watching, like meanwhile, like stuff like that, and they stole something from a Bleak Fae, and he was hiring people to get it back, but they were the mercenaries were offering up years of their lives, family members, like body parts, things to just for this Bleak Fae lord to accept, to even give them the contract.
That's insane.
So, and they were just like, we don't want to ever hear about this anymore. And I'm like, it's a horrible place. Like, I do a lot of horror stuff. It's a horrible place.
That sounds terrifying.
They only have great value water in the Feywild.
I agree. The Fae are terrifying, and they're a great, useful tool, especially when you want to like attempt to mess with people's perception of the world. They are awesome for that. So cool.
Especially because players, even without really trying, sometimes they meta. The separation of player knowledge and character knowledge is usually a hurdle that people only get over through like years and years of experience playing D&D, or through proper coaching from their DM to never expect what's going to happen. And the Feywild or the Fae is a very good tool, just like the Mimics. Everything is sort of like a tool, a utility that you can use to manipulate perceptions, to manipulate expectations.
Mm-hmm. I love using that against the players too. If they have out of game knowledge of something, they're like, "Oh, this is a something. Of course, it's this." And I was like, I didn't tell you that's what it was like in my world. You didn't ask. This spits acid. It's like, but they don't spit acid in the book. I don't know what that book is. That book's not in my world.
It's actually funny. I just saw a meme today, a D&D meme, and it was about like the dungeon master manual or the guide, and it was like, yeah, it's called the guide, but to be fair, the book is not a cop. It can't force you to follow the rules. If you want to break the rules and do your own goddamn thing, you can go and do that. You want to have a beholder with like 20 friggin' arms that has like a 24 strength and just beats the literal shit out of people? Go for it.
Oh my god, dude, I want a beholder that replaces all of the eye stalks with giant beefy like Geodude arms. It just beats people down with like 30 hands.
Just a big ass Machamp that's circular with one eye.
Yes, dude.
It's like, make a deck save. I failed. You're punched.
Yeah. You're going in my Pokeball now, big guy.
Yeah. Hop in.
Well, all right, there we go. There's our go-to monsters. Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and feel free to share with us, like, especially on YouTube, like, what are some of your favorite go-to monsters? Even, share some experiences that you've had as a DM or as a player where you got into situations where you didn't expect things to happen because of the influences of a creature that your DM or that you, as a DM, put into your game world. Would love to hear that.
Absolutely. I do have a quick follow-up question. It was just something I thought of right before this session, and I really wanted to ask you guys. It can be a difficult question, but it can be pretty easy at the same time. What is the most iconic monster in Dungeons and Dragons in your perspective?
Ooh.
Who wants to go first?
Ooh, I'm gonna take the long straw on that one.
Okay.
It falls to me.
Yeah.
Man, I always lose to straws. I would say, to be quite honest, since I've been doing this for way too long, dire rats. Low levels, you always have to clear the basement of a tavern of dire rats. Back in the day, that was what you did at first level. You just cleared the basement of dire rats. And you could die, but it was dire rats.
That's totally fair. The very first monster you fight is the one that you never forget.
Mm-hmm. And even in video games, a lot of video games, they do that too, that are supposed to like mimic D&D. It's like, first up, there's something in my basement destroying all my ale, and it's just dire rats.
Yeah, don't they do that in RuneScape? Isn't there like a big dune of like big rats that you have to fight in the tutorial island?
I think so.
Yeah, there's like rats in there.
Rats are definitely a trope, man. Like they are in Oblivion, they're in Morrowind. Skyrim, they brought that back with the whole rat trope in the basement, and you had to clear out all the rats from eating the ale, poisoning the ale.
You meet your group in a tavern, and then you fight rats in the tavern.
That's right.
That's what you do.
It's par for the course, truly.
Then adventure.
And adventure. Exactly. Stavi, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Well, I mean, so I'll go first.
Okay.
So we've already noted some exemplary monsters throughout D&D's history that have become iconic over the time, either through like pop culture references like Mind Flayers and well, we didn't mention it yet, but Demogorgons, through Stranger Things, have started coming back into the spotlight of like iconic D&D monsters. Yeah, so we mentioned the Beholder. I mean, dragons. I think, especially after going through all of these classic Advanced Dungeons and Dragon modules that I have, like the Village of Hamlet and Keep on the Borderlands and stuff like that, one of the first monsters that players run into in that can kill them in one hit, by the way, it's the first monster you meet, and it kills you in one hit. Giant frogs.
Really?
Giant frogs. They literally they eat the player, they gobble them up, and you're dead. You have like 1 or 2 turns to do something while you're inside the stomach, and if you fail to do anything, your character's dead instantly.
Oh my god.
And you can't do big things, right? Like, you can't swing a sword or...
Nope.
It's like small handheld things. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, because AD&D had a mechanic where it took into account the length of your weapon in encounters. So if you were in a 5-foot hallway, you couldn't use a longsword or a halberd because you didn't have room to swing it.
Right.
So if you're inside the constricted, poisonous innards of a frog, unless you had a dagger in your hand or the ability to cast spells on touch, you could flail around and fight, but there were no strength checks back then. There was no dexterity or constitution saving throws. There was save versus poison, but usually you just died, you know?
Yeah.
But in all those adventures, I always see giant frogs. Giant frogs are usually the big one.
That's crazy. I would not want to be swallowed by a giant frog at all. That's terrifying.
I actually had a character that almost died in 2nd edition from a giant frog.
Oh my god.
And I only survived because I'm crazy. And a year out of game before that game, some assassin was attacking our town and we captured him. And I found on him like a suicide herb. So if he was ever captured, he would take it and die so he couldn't be questioned. But I searched him and I found it. I kept it. Year later, I got swallowed by the frog. And my DM's like, haha, got you now. And I was like, can I reach my pouch? And he's like, yeah, why? And I take out the herb and I push it down the frog's throat.
So smart.
And the frog dies and my DM's like, I hate you. And I was like, do I get out? Hate me later, do I get out?
Yeah, you suck.
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah, try again, dude. I cyanided your frog. But so, yeah, these are only things that that I guess we're saying as like first impressions, you know, because first impressions are a big deal with D&D, especially with new players. And like Mike said, you usually remember your first monster encounter, and that makes probably the biggest impact. As a gateway drug into the tabletop wonder that is dice rolling for combat. So what about you, Dan? What do you think is the most iconic?
Well, so we did touch on it pretty heavily, so I'm not going to go too into it. I'm picking more of a specific version, but I would have to say the Red Dragon. Solely because, I mean, that was the dragon. There it is. For those of you that can see on the YouTube, we'll take a picture. There is the Red Dragon. I mean, it's on the very first book, the Red Book, the classic Red Book. It's on the Monster Manual. I mean, the Red Dragon is the iconic Dungeons and Dragons vibe. I mean, just dragons in general. Obviously, it's in the frickin' name of the game. And like we mentioned before, seeing them is so rare because they are so deadly. So it's this fun little mystical, like, oh man, maybe one day we will get to that dragon. Maybe we will be able to defeat the dragon. The classic tale of the adventurer slaying the dragon. But yeah, specifically the Red Dragon. Because, I mean, you even see it on t-shirts at freaking FYE nowadays. You know, the classic red, you know, with the classic Red Book design, and I don't think you can get any more iconic than the Red Dragon, for sure.
I definitely agree with you. Yeah, I mean, and we haven't talked really too much about like this at all, but when it comes to D&D art, I believe the author, the guy's name was Larry Elmore. He was one of the original illustrators of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, going from, I think, AD&D all the way up to like 3.5, and then he may have passed away shortly after that. But that image of the Red Dragon on the cover of the Red Box, I think that was Larry Elmore. I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, the reason why I bring this up is because illustrations definitely play a huge part in that. It's usually... It's one thing to have theater of the mind, but if you have like a physical representation of what it is you are fighting in front of you, it can make all the difference.
Exactly. I mean, going quickly back to what you were saying, the first thing you encounter is something extremely memorable. I remember when we first were in Phandalin and we were going underground when you were running our game back 10 years ago. And we went underground to go fight a bunch of bandits to take over the underground again for the town folk. There was a Nothic, and I didn't know what that was.
That's right.
And you were like, yeah, it's like a psychic being. They're terrifying. And I was like, I don't really know. And you showed me the picture of what a Nothic looked like. And I'm like, that is disgusting. I will never forget this. Ever. Yeah, no, visual representation also is a huge factor in, like, the iconic character. Or, like, a iconic monster, rather.
For sure. And I kind of want to reiterate what we were talking about before with the Beholders. If I had a second pick, it would definitely be the Beholder.
Yeah.
Mostly because that creature has been featured in almost every single piece of pop culture that has to do with, like, D&D-esque fantasy, high fantasy stuff. There was a manga back in the 80s that is now getting a Netflix adaptation. It's called, I think it's called Bastard. And it's like a high fantasy, like really gory, really adult themed high fantasy romp. And if you go and you watch the trailer, there is a Beholder in the trailer that is shooting rays of death at the party, you know?
No way.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool.
That's cool. That's super cool.
Look at Doom. We were talking about this before we started recording. The Pain Elementals and... God, I forget what the other one was called. Oh, the Caca Demon. Yeah, the Caca Demon is literally a Beholder.
Yeah, you even showed the picture. We'll show it on the YouTube as well.
Yeah,
it was like this huge like being, but like the head of it is literally what you see in Doom.
It literally is.
It literally is. They just 100% just clipped it on Paint and just put it on the box art.
on Paint. On MS Paint, yeah. They made a clip art of...
Yeah.
So can I pose a question to you guys real quick before we wrap up for this episode?
Absolutely.
What do you guys think, in your opinion, is the most iconically bad Dungeons & Dragons monster?
I need a minute on that one.
That's good.
And I want audience participation in this too. So if you guys have made it through this episode so far, I would love to read what you think is the worst, arguably, maybe not objectively, but you know, in your opinion, subjectively.
Okay, I think I know mine. I'm going purely off of the actual physical look of the monster. And also because of the way the DM at the time used this character. Did you ever see the Flump?
Oh my lord! Yeah, the jellyfish.
Yeah, the jellyfish with the long like eyes, and he looks really friendly. He just looks like a really nice guy.
They are docile.
Yeah, they're super docile. And I remember looking at it for the because he brought it up. He was like, yeah, this is Flump. And I was like, what the heck is a Flump? I've never seen this in my life. And he looked it up. And I looked it up, and I didn't even know that was a real character or a monster. And he played like this like super sweet, super nice monster that just slightly floated around. He's like, I will lead the way, you know? And I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. So, but it's ridiculously silly. So silly looking.
Yeah, they're the only good things in the Underdark.
Yeah,
they really
literally,
are. Yeah.
The only good things. Yeah, so my pick is Flump because he's just so dumb looking, but I love him to death.
I love it. What about you, Mike?
I find that a lot of plant monsters that aren't like tendrilled or vined, like just like little like you was talking about before, like just little mushroom things. Like I forgot what they're called. It's like something, but they're like little primitive mushroom men.
Oh man, I can't. Oh shoot, I can't think of it. I have a freaking miniature of it too.
Do you really?
I do. Yeah.
Is
It
it
starts
like
with a T, you said?
I think so. I think it's like a Todoi or something. Or
something like that. It's like a mushroom folk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just like if they were humans, they would be the weakest humans, but they're monsters because they look like a mushroom. And there's nothing great about them. They just are mushroom people, and a group that's 4th level would, if they were inclined to be murder hobos, could just wipe them out and eat them. And I don't know what I would use them for besides to make the group feel bad for killing them. So I'm not 100% sure. I appreciate them. I'm happy they exist. If the group runs into them, they'll lead the way or show them where there's clean water or whatever. But,
Are they bad? Are they like evil? Their alignment?
I don't think so. I think they're... I don't... Now I want to, like, check, too. Like...
Yeah, I don't even know anything about them, to be honest with you. I never use them. I've never seen them be used. But they're like weird little mushroom dudes.
Yeah.
I can't help but think about the mushroom guys from Dark Souls.
Oh yeah.
Like the big chunky like radish spirit looking dudes that just kind of
they just kind of move around.
They kind of meander and they're like, you know, being a mushroom.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just a mushroom.
I like how we're on like we're basically on a trail of like the weird looking ones that are like kind of cool. They're just kind of chill. What about you, Stavi? I feel like you posed the question. You should have a good one.
Yeah, so one that I was thinking about, and this is primarily due to my interactions or passive readings, my vicarious experiences through reading Reddit, like D&D Reddit, which can be a cesspool. And I'll be honest, man, my answer is, and this is purely because I know that people, if they use this monster, they abuse it in a way that makes it uncomfortable for the rest of the table. Usually, it is what it is, but I would have to say the succubus.
Fair enough.
I would have to say the succubus. I don't think that there ever has. I mean, to be fair, it is in their nature to be seductive and stuff for their own purposes, but and anything along that line too. Like, I've seen player character tieflings that kind of turn into like pseudo succubi, and it's primarily just for like this weird erotic fantasy that they're trying to project on the rest of the table, and it just makes everything really uncomfortable for people. It hasn't happened to me, but scouring Reddit, like, I've read more than enough stories of people who have dealt with like a seductive or a sexually suggestive character where the DM or the players or both kind of go off the rails and turn it into this really unwarranted, awful experience. And then they,
I'm being called out so hard right now.
What do you mean?
My character married a succubus like years ago.
Oh my god, that's right. Didn't I DM that?
Yeah. Oh shit! I can't believe you forgot that.
Oh my god, I'm calling myself out.
I'm being so called out right now.
We were tame about it.
That's why my second character even came to be. My tiefling was Ol's offspring because he married a succubus and they made the tiefling chick.
Yeah, but we were very tame about it. It was very PG.
Yeah.
You know, like, there are some people who are like, and then she undresses her blouse and her bazangas are hanging out and like glistening in the moonlight, and like trying to get like really like Matt Mercer, but like a romantic novel.
Yeah,
you know,
where it's like, it's to that point where it's like, I think this is for you, not for us.
Yeah, this is more for you.
Yeah. I
need you to roll a Constitution saving throw as a DM.
Right now.
Right now. Or leave.
Yeah, please. This is getting uncomfortable. Do you need a minute? Should we step out?
It happens with other creatures too, like nymphs like forest nymphs or I don't know what they're called. I guess they're called nymphs. In Elder Scrolls, they're called spriggans, where they're like forest spirits that have a female shape. And it's always like the objectification of like a monster that does look attractive. That I would argue is probably one of the worst archetype of monsters to throw into a campaign. But that also depends on how the party handles it. It also depends on how the DM portrays it. But there is a lot of room for error and a lot of room for uncomfortability.
I definitely agree with that. It's hard to kind of use that. You kind of have to know your party. You really do to put in something like that, because it can derail like immediately, especially with a succubus like our freaking game. it derailed like crazy. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Real quick. I just found the mushroom race is myconids. It's not a T. Like MICONID or something such. They're like lawful
myconids?
Neutral. Yeah, they're like lawful, neutral, peaceful, just like, hey everybody, like
just like the Flump.
Just like the Flump.
They're flumps with spears that reproduce with spores.
Oh my god.
And I think it's a player race, too.
I think it is. Yeah. I think it is. I think you're right.
Oh. Also, Kenkus. I'm going to piss off a lot of people with that one.
Yeah, a lot of people love Kenkus.
People love Kenku.
What is... I'm not familiar.
Kenkus are basically bipedal crow creatures. Usually really good rogues and thieves, but also could be good at spell casting.
Oh, yeah. I know, yeah. I do remember those.
They're like ravens, raven people.
I think I even played one for a one-shot once. Yeah, those things suck.
They suck. And if you play one, you suck too.
Dang it! You call me out on the succubus, you call me out on the crow, dude.
You married a succubus, you played a Kenku. Have you been a Flump?
Have you been a Flump? Do you have a Flump familiar, Dan?
No, but I have a Flump plush.
You have a Flump plush?
I do. It's a little figurine, dude. Yeah.
Dan, I don't know who you are anymore.
Oh man. I think we should end right here.
That's it. Next character, Tiefling, Flump. Do it.
Okay. That sounds good. All right. Well, wonderful call outs. Thanks everyone. That was the second.
Like, I'm done. I'm done.
Well, that was the second episode of the Crithalla Podcast. I think this one was a lot of fun. This was a lot more freeform than the last one. If you guys enjoyed, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, great topic too.
Yeah, it was great.
I love discussing monsters and stuff. There are a few other things that I haven't gotten into, but maybe for another episode. There
will definitely be another one. So make sure you watch out for that one, huh? Thank you guys so much for checking out the Crithalla Podcast. Please check out the YouTube. We do top 10s over there. We also do story videos. We put the podcast video version over there. Check out the podcast on any normal app that you like to use, like Apple Podcast, Spotify. I got everything going on the last podcast, so it's on Google. It's on everywhere. It's everywhere. Stavi, you got any plugs?
Well, not really. I do have a YouTube if you guys want to check that out. I believe that's Warband Gaming. Haven't really been super active on it, with work and everything. I kind of haven't been doing too much, so
fair enough.
But yeah,
I'm gonna plug Warband Gaming anyway. So
okay, yeah,
that'll be in the links.
Yeah, thanks. Eventually, we'll start putting videos up.
I know I'm subscribed.
Are you really?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
My boys, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, do you now have a plug potentially, or
no? Still lurking around, working on settings. Hopefully, when something is publishable or enough to show more people, there will be a plug, but to be announced.
All right, fair enough. Well, thank you guys so much for checking out the Crithalla Podcast. My name is Olskifleck, and we will see you in the very next episode. Bye.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Boy. Boy. Boy.
Flump.